takes a look at the log frame and can give comments in track changes. It's all done remotely and fairly quickly. The operational manager basically sends the log frame, and this expert can give comments and advice on monitoring systems. So this is for like tailor-made support. If you do have an issue or questions that you would like to discuss with somebody specifically for your project at some length, then feel free to approach your task manager or the operational manager, and we can provide this. I'm just looking at the chat as well. Or through Agata, then if you manage centrally from a HQ, then through Agata, we can request for any project that is having questions or wants to discuss, we are here, and Agata can make the request. So let me just see, here we go. I have to minimize this. So this is the terminology that we use at DEVCO for our log frames. And it comes from Prague, and it also is the OECD DAC approach. I understand that some organizations may have other terminology, so I just wanted to start with this, and then we can see what else is in use and what you have in your log frames right now. So at the highest level, we have the impact level. This is where we only contribute together with many other interventions. So the government actions will contribute here, the other donors, civil society, even private sector. This is long-term change at country, regional, or sector level. And this is basically just making sure that the ship is sailing in the right direction. We don't monitor this every month or even every year. I would say at the beginning, at the end of the project, we want to see how is the situation going. And this helps us to refine design in future years. So if things are not going right, then maybe we need to change our intervention logic and learn from what has been done in this area to improve. At outcome level, these are results that are medium-term changes usually, and they are under the control of our target groups. So this is usually behavior change or perceptions change or a system change if our target group is a government institution. So these are changes that are not under my control as a project. I can't do these things, but I aim to influence them very directly with my project's work. So I will just have a contribution there. Again, I'm not responsible for the entire change at the outcome level, but I should feel fairly responsible for this result. This is maybe the biggest why of my project. Why am I doing this project? To change these outcomes. And then at output level, we have goods, services. The word benefits is making its way here, directly delivered by the project. So these are things that I can promise to deliver, that I should feel very responsible for, and they're under my control. So these are 3 levels of results. We have results at output level, and we contribute to results at outcome and impact levels. Underneath, of course, we have activities and inputs. So this is the bottom part of the log frame in Prague. At the bottom, there is an activity matrix with resources, means, and activities. Other terminology that you might have seen or might run into, there is in older Prague templates, we used to call outputs, they used to be expected results. Now, because we recognize that results exist at different levels, like I said, there could be some results at outcome level. In the long term, maybe we contribute to also results at impact level. So we abandoned this, and the expected results was replaced by outputs, and purpose is now the outcome or the specific objective. So these are equivalents, basically. I put a link here for the 2016 Prague, which I understand is applicable to you. And I checked, and this is basically the results chain that there is in there as well. So impact overall objective, outcome specific objective, outputs, and then activities below. There are also models or templates for interim and final narrative reports. This I checked last night, and it's also in the 2016 Prague. There are templates there, and there is a narrative section on how each of these results is being achieved or contributed to. And then there is a log frame with the current values column. So the current values for each indicator are to be provided with each progress report. In EC better regulation, this is something that applies for the entire commission. So when there is more than one DG working on a monitoring system, they follow a slightly different results chain. And here outcomes are called results, just to make it a bit more confusing. But you shouldn't run into this because you're working only with us. So mostly the Prague is the Bible for anything that DEVCO is doing. Any questions so far on this or anything on terminology? I wanted also to hear from you and your log frames. Are there any other terms that are used in your log frames, like immediate outcomes or intermediate outcomes or anything else that you have that doesn't fit what I just presented?
Milena?
Yeah.
In our log frame, there is also intermediate outcome.
You have, huh?
Yes.
Okay. So let's, and you have a real outcome above or not?
Yes.
You have both. You have a...
Yeah. We have 2 outcomes and 1 intermediate that is placed in between.
So you have outcome 1.
Yeah.
Outcome 2.
Intermediate outcome after the outcome 1.
Mm-hmm. So
and
this
then
is 1.1.
Yes, and then outcome 2.
And then outcome 2 also has an intermediate or no?
No.
Okay. And then outputs below. You have outputs for both.
Yeah.
For both outcomes, you have some outputs below, huh?
Yes. I will check again the log frame.
Does anybody else have any other terminology? So the reason why we sometimes see intermediate outcomes is to avoid having huge jumps from one level to another. And we'll talk about this a bit more through examples. Most of the time, we try to focus on just 3 result levels, but some changes need to be more nuanced. And some concepts like capacity development or awareness raising, they stretch across these levels. They're applicable at different levels. And we want to be more specific about changes over time. So the output level is the first change we're going to see. We're going to deliver something with our project quite directly. Then we feel like sometimes people need time to absorb what we have developed. They need to be more informed about it to get some practice with it, maybe. So then that becomes an intermediate outcome. The fact that they are opening their mind and they're accepting these new concepts and that they are working it through in their head on how this could work in practice. And then at outcome level, the actual outcome level, let's call it the primary outcome, this is where the change happens. So they have accepted the new concepts that we have informed them about, they have absorbed them, they have maybe practiced them a bit, and then the primary outcome is change in behavior. They're now applying this in their lives. And in the long term, all this, hopefully, if many people do it, will contribute to an impact. So I like to give the condom example. Because at output level, we may be informing people about the need to use a condom to prevent AIDS and why this is important. We may even distribute some condoms. At intermediate outcome level, like I said, sometimes there is a need to have intermediate outcomes on the fact that people are reflecting on this, and the fact that they are maybe discussing it with friends, things like that. And then at outcome level, we want them to use the condom next time they have sex. So this is the harder outcome, is the change in behavior. And then at impact level, hopefully AIDS rates will go down if people start using condoms more. So that's how it works in theory. Now let's see in practice. But I just wanted to get a hold of your terminology to see what else pops up in Logframes, and how this is addressed in your Logframes. So let's see how it compares later, with what you have. One other change that I wanted to highlight for you is the smart definition of results. In the past, we used to talk about smart indicators, and there used to be an effort to put everything, to pack everything in this indicator, even the target, to increase employment from this rate to that rate, everything was in there. So now they've stopped doing this with indicators, and DEVCO would like to focus on the smart definition of results. And we take into consideration that not everything also needs to be packed in the result statement. We also have the indicator and target columns that help us to achieve this smart definition. So the target, of course, is in the target column in the log frame. So the whole horizontal row in the log frame is what allows us to have a smart definition of results. Not only the result statement. So there is no need to pack everything in the result statement. But this is a slight change of concept that I just wanted to highlight. And we developed, in cooperation with the thematic units, we realized that sometimes people who work in delegations or in implementing organizations, they're not experts in every single thematic area. And sometimes they're asked at short notice to write a log frame on a particular issue or to include a particular issue in their ongoing projects. And more often now, we're combining different sectors together in one project. We're trying to have a more comprehensive approach, or so you are asked to develop expertise suddenly in digitalization or something that you haven't worked on before. So we have developed with the thematic units a new tool that is on capacity for dev, which consists of a results chain for each sector the DEVCO works on. And so far we have covered the 13 sectors. And then a list of indicators. So for each output or outcome or impact here, if you double click, it opens a list of indicators that could be of interest, and just as a menu, as an inspiration. So this is more if you have colleagues who are developing new projects, if you want to share the link, it could be useful. For you guys, I know your log frames are already set, so it's just for future reference, really. But we do realize the challenges of defining a project, and we want to provide as much support as we can for indicators especially. So I lined up a few examples that will help us to discuss this in more concrete terms. I feel like you only get to the bottom of things through examples. So first, we will go through a few development interventions of a more classic type. So there will be a stronger impact statement, and there is a mix of infrastructure, capacity building, different things are being done. So it's not very similar to your project, it's possibly from what Harmyan tells me, but I thought it's a good place to start because this is what you might have seen in other projects more frequently. So the first project is on fighting gender-based violence. So the outputs are strengthened capacities of the prosecutorial and judicial officials in the field of gender-based violence. There could be some awareness raising also about gender-based violence done through the project. There could be some work with the police units as well on strengthening investigatory capacities for gender-based violence. Then as the outcome, if we have strengthened capacities of these institutions, we hope to see increased prosecution of gender-based violence cases. So that's the link like if the evidence base improves, if the prosecutorial and judicial capacities improve in this sector, then we hope that the prosecution will increase. That's the outcome we're trying to contribute to. It's not under our control. It's something that we will only contribute to, but it should be a fairly direct contribution. So this is probably quite a comprehensive intervention, a larger budget, and it aims to make this change. And then in the long term, if we increase the prosecution, we hope to reduce gender-based violence in the country. So this is one way to approach a results chain with kind of fairly simple and clear statements. You might challenge the impact and say, but this is too much. You know, it's a very hardcore impact. Just from prosecution to get to a reduction of gender-based violence is a big jump. You could say also to increase the convictions rate for gender-based violence. Maybe that's an impact statement. So you could bring it down from reducing gender-based violence overall in the country to just increasing the convictions rate, since we're focusing a bit on the judicial sector, even in the outcome statement. So there's ways to play with the results formulation to bring it a bit tighter together. And of course, in this slide, we don't see the assumptions. And the assumptions column can be crucial for an intervention logic. At output level, usually we have assumptions on people applying what they have learned from us, because this is not under our control. We can share knowledge, we can make sure that they have access to information and good practices, but we can't guarantee that they will apply what they have learned, or that they will have freedom to apply it. Because sometimes we train program level staff, kind of working level colleagues, but the management refuses the new approach and says, this is not a priority right now. We're just going to keep doing things the way we've been doing them. Why fix it if it ain't broken? So at output level, these are the main kind of types of assumptions. So the application then of what we have taught happens at outcome level. We hope they start prosecuting more of these cases. At outcome level, the assumption might be that increased prosecution is a deterrent for people who commit gender-based violence, because this may not hold true. This is an external assumption that I'm making, that if we increase prosecution, there will be a reduction of gender-based violence in the long term. But we know also that in some countries there is prosecution, and it still happens at fairly high rates. The violence still takes place. So these are things to be discussed. What goes in the assumptions column and what is in your results chain, and does it make sense? Does it all, like when you try to explain it to a colleague who's not a specialist, does it make sense for them? So this is the first example. Any comments on this example? If not, we move to the second case study. This one is more about infrastructure. So again, not what your projects are doing, but just to explain the concepts and how this is applied in different types of projects. So we have existing medical facilities being upgraded, new medical facilities being built, and then basically training or mentoring some of the medical staff to enhance their technical skills. And we're also improving the management and administration skills of the clinics. If we strengthen all of these things, this is the support we're directly providing. If we manage to deliver this, then we should be achieving two outcomes. One is on increased access to health services, thanks to the fact that we have built new facilities. And one is on improved quality of these services, because the doctors are better able to provide care, and the management systems are doing a better job. So these are the two outcomes that you might see. And then in the long term, if there is better access to care and the care becomes of better quality, we might reduce mortality. So this is how things flow. And again, maybe this case is a bit too idealistic, because it's not just because you built a hospital that people come into it. You know, I know that my uncle does not go to the doctor under any circumstances until he's in serious pain. So people may have a resistance to these new establishments, and this needs to be addressed in the results chain or in the assumptions. And then maybe it's monitored in the assumptions that people are actually going to these new facilities and using what is available. So this is the second case study, again, a hardcore impact statement to reduce mortality, limited to the districts where we have built the facilities, of course. So there is a limitation there. We're not looking at the whole country. We're just going to look at our target regions. But a fairly classic results chain that it combines also infrastructure and capacity building and maybe some admin systems improvement. Any comments on this case study?
Hi, thank you, Milena. I wanted to just comment one thing, is that in our, maybe a language issue or a terminology issue, but when we talk about the most important part, the impact and overall objective part, we never express it to be an action, to reduce something, to strengthen something, to do something. That's an action. That's not an impact. The impact, the way we describe it, the way we write reports and the projects, is that the child and maternal mortality in districts is reduced, because that's how you measure. You can't, you know, if you to reduce it, it's different measurements than you use in impact. That's just a linguistic thing, but
No, but it's good you spotted that. And
it has to be a status. Impact has to be a status, not an action. Yeah.
So the reason why DEVCO has decided not to go that far is because at that level, our contribution is quite remote. So that's why they chose, you will see at outcome level, they say increased, improved. At output level, they do say upgraded, established. The verb is in past tense or passive voice, like you use it. But at impact level, they steered away from that. And that was a conscious decision, because our contribution is so remote and so mixed with other contributions that they decided not to go that route. I know that DGNIR, for example, follows the same approach as you do. But in DEVCO, they did not want to do this. Maybe it will change in the future, but it's just for now, this is how they present the terminology and the examples. But it's not a huge issue. I think if you have that in your log frame, it's fine. Some people, especially in the human rights or more sensitive areas, some organizations also like to use the verb to contribute. So they will always start the impact statement by to contribute to better human rights protection or whatever it is, because it's slightly a sensitive topic, and the government doesn't want to see a hard impact statement like to reduce child and maternal mortality, because they feel too responsible, I guess, for it. So they want to create some distance, and then they say to contribute to the reduction of child and maternal mortality. And we also accept that because we ultimately want people to feel comfortable with the results chain. It's not a huge issue, but methodologically speaking, it's understood that at impact level, we only contribute. I don't think it needs to be said. We know that not one single project is not going to do a whole world of changes at that level. Any other comments? So then we get into the second group of examples that are particular category of projects that are more similar to yours, which are on capacity building and awareness raising interventions. So a softer approach. It could be short-term or medium-term interventions. This can be also on-demand support, where you don't know from the beginning of your project what exactly is going to be needed. Sometimes you're supporting a secretariat for the African Union or an institution that has an annual work plan. Also, could be also at national level. And and then you don't know at the beginning of your project, like you're writing a project, but you can't go too much into detail because you depend on what the institution adopts as its priorities for the given year. So there is a level of unpredictability. You have to be responsive to what the needs are in the field. It could include technical assistance, training, awareness raising campaigns, or social media campaigns. Sometimes it can be combined with infrastructure, but then we go back into the classic results chains. There are now more and more interventions where we're only providing this soft support. Sometimes they're a technical expert facility where we send an expert to draft or contribute to drafting a legislation or a new regulation. And sometimes it's training, promoting exchange between countries, or raising awareness about a particular topic of interest. So let's see how a results chain can be a little bit adapted to match this new type of project. So let's say we have an expert facility, and an expert is being sent to improve some policies and make them more inclusive. The outputs are focusing on enhancing public capacities or increasing knowledge about a particular topic, in this case about inclusive social protection systems or mechanisms. So this is what our TA can provide. We can organize consultations and meetings with civil society. We can have an expert who will draft a piece of legislation or a new regulation. So these are my activities, are kind of focusing on this soft support. At the outcome level, I want to know whether these strategies, policy, system, whatever I have been drafting and working on is now more inclusive or more effective or more sustainable, whatever we have been trying to do. So the outcome level relies on a periodic assessment of policies in this field to see how are things going in reality. So I have been at output level really talking about the importance of making sure people with disabilities are included and other vulnerable groups. At outcome level, is this happening? Is there any change in the policy framework? Has any of our preaching been heard and adopted in the policies? And then at the impact level, we want to improve access to social protection systems in this case. So here, you don't have, normally in a social protection field, you would have an impact statement on increased, reduced poverty or on reduced inequalities. So for social protection, these are their main kind of impact statements normally. But here, this is too far removed. You know, we are only providing TA for policies, maybe organizing some meetings with different stakeholders. It's a bit too much to jump to reduce poverty as the impact. So how we dealt with this is to bring it down closer to the policy level. So the policy at outcome level is supposed to be more inclusive of vulnerable groups. At impact level, we want to see if these people are actually accessing the social protection system in larger numbers. And then this can be monitored through administrative data of the ministry to see how many people are benefiting actually from year to year from these measures. And in this way, we don't get into the topics of poverty among certain groups and expensive surveys that we can't afford with a TA project and so on. So this is how one project dealt with the results chain. Any comments on this example? So some good practices, and then I have a few more examples. We need to check the hierarchy of expected results. We need to make sure that the outputs focus on what we feel comfortable that we can develop or deliver. That outcomes are really focusing on what are we trying to change with this project. So here we're focusing on making sure the policies are more inclusive. In your case, it's probably something else that we will talk about this now, but basically making sure that we go up and up with the results chain, that we don't repeat the same things at different levels. Making sure that we're also as specific as possible. Who is the target of our intervention? Whose behavior or policies or capacities or awareness are we trying to change? On what topic? Avoiding causal links in a single output or outcome or in the impact statement. So we see sometimes these very fluffy and long sentences in the as the objective or as an output. For example, to strengthen the education system management in order to improve quality and equity. So this needs to be split up. And the first part is probably an outcome, and the second part could be maybe part of an impact, but it shouldn't be all in one sentence. And as soon as we see this is the buzzword, in order to, that brings me to a higher level of result. So I can see that there is a mix here of different levels, you know, to strengthen the education system management happens first, in order to, and then these things happen later. So these other changes are supposed to be going at the level above in the log frame, not in the same sentence. And then the second example I have is to promote democracy through the support to electoral processes, citizen participation, and transparency. So here we have the opposite. We have the word through, which sends me from something that is probably an impact statement to promote democracy down to other things that are lower below and that should be either as outputs or outcomes. So we need to separate these things and not repeat them in every single result statement, which makes the wording more fluffy, and it's more difficult for the evaluators to understand what is actually supposed to be the impact of this project. Like, how does this work? If there is too much repetition, they can't get a clear reading, and you might even have a misunderstanding. You know, you might put priority on democracy, and other people might see just the electoral process, or, you know, it breeds, there's a risk for discrepancies. Let me just get the battery from my computer.
From what I'm used to see, sometimes these causal links is quite a temptation in the DEAR projects. To insert such a causal links. From those I know, there's such
I think we can cover all of these things, but they just need to be put at the right level and then not repeated every time. So the buzzwords are in order to, by, through. These are the ones that we see most often. Anything that directs you to a different level from where you are. Then a few good practices is if you have several specific objectives or outcomes, to link with numbering the outputs below, just to make sure that it's clear for everybody what leads to what. As a primary, of course, things will contribute even across to other outcomes, but it also allows us to have more streamlined reporting, and it avoids from things being forgotten. Results should be identical in the log frame and other parts of the document. This is particularly important to keep an eye on during implementation, because sometimes we do some changes, maybe in the output formulation during implementation as things evolve, and we forget to update them in other parts of the project document. So we just need to make sure that if changes are made, they're made everywhere, and that the formulation is consistent. Again, to avoid misunderstandings and to facilitate the evaluation process when they come, that they have only one clear results chain and they know what they're dealing with. And any changes, of course, need to be explained in the progress report and approved. Mainstreaming. Sometimes it happens that people say, we will focus on women and children. And then there is no disaggregation of data for any indicator. So if we say that we're focusing on particular groups, It's really important that you get data for those groups specifically. And that's the main way to achieve this, is to make sure you disaggregate the data by sex or by age or whoever disability status, whoever might be the target group. So this sometimes gets forgotten, and sometimes it's, politically important to mention, but then if we are mentioning it, then we need to report on it. Otherwise, we'll get called out on promising things and not delivering, or not even knowing whether we have delivered. So here I have some more examples of result statements from output level. Sometimes we see outputs on training being provided. And for us, this is a problematic approach because training is an activity, and we don't want to have a repetition of activities at output level. We want outputs to group a certain number of activities and to give us the desired result of these activities. Like what's supposed to come off this training, okay, we've done a training and so it might be a better formulation to talk about strengthened awareness or increased awareness or capacity or knowledge and skills. Some people don't feel comfortable using the words increased capacity, because capacity is something that is a broad concept, and it takes longer time to develop. The most immediate level of capacity building would be to increase somebody's knowledge and skills. The medium term, let's say, is the application of this knowledge and skills. So here we're already at outcome level. The application may be under perfect circumstances. In a slightly longer term, we want to know that people can apply new knowledge and skills under unforeseen circumstances. So there are different layers there. Capacity building is not something that happens only at output level, and we recognize this. So if people feel uncomfortable using the words strengthen capacity, they can also say increase knowledge and skills as the most immediate result of hopefully the training and other activities you are likely to provide. So let's say we have this case on increased knowledge and skills of teachers and students on ways, sorry, I'm missing a word there, on ways to combat climate change. Like this could be an output formulation. It's at the right level. If I have a grant that is supposed to improve knowledge about climate change, then this should be my output. Like this is what I'm supposed to deliver. Not just to organize events, but really to make sure that these events are of quality and that the people who come to these events pick up some of what I've been trying to tell them, and that they have an increase in knowledge.
Milena, can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course.
Just wanted to check in. So I do understand the whole difference between what is a good output statement. Would the training, the number of trainings, be an appropriate output indicator? Because
we're trying to focus our monitoring on the beneficiaries. So a better indicator would be at the most basic level, number of people who have come to your trainings. Okay. Sometimes in regional projects, it's important to know also how many the trainings have happened in each country, to make sure nobody has a gap. So then, of course, you may want to have also the number of trainings in different countries. But most of the time, it's not so important whether you're doing 5 or 7, The more important and the more attractive data to report is on how many people benefited from this training, disaggregated by sex, country, whatever is important for you. But that makes a better progress report if you can talk about the beneficiaries. At the most basic level, that's the data. And that, I think, is in the indicators that Agatha and Harmyan will share with you. Now, even better is if you can say something about the beneficiaries' level of knowledge before and after the training. So if you can make a test that you administer before and after, and you see how many people can name 3 ways in their daily lives to reduce CO2 emissions or something like that. or to save water. You know, name 3 ways to save water that you can do in your daily life. Can they do it before the training? And then can they do it after the training? So these are simpler ways that you can enhance your reporting from just number of beneficiaries to tell a better story. You know, our training is proven effective because basically all of our training participants are able to show better knowledge after the training. And then underneath this output, there could be a variety of activities. It could be a training, it could be a study visit, there could be an awareness campaign. So this is why we are trying to distinguish between outputs and activities, because we don't want to have an output for every single activity. We want to group them, and then we want to see from all these activities, what kind of changes are we seeing? It just depends how much resources you have to do different types of monitoring at output level. I mean, the most basic is to know how many people you have reached with all of these different activities. So here's another example at output level. We have awareness campaigns on sustainable development implementation, on sustainable development are implemented in 6 target regions. So it's the same type of issue. Basically, awareness campaigns or social media campaign or whatever is an activity. And I want to know what's changed as a result of this activity. And who is the target group also? It's a bit vague in the way it's defined. I don't even know who is supposed to be learning about sustainable development. So a better formulation might be increased awareness among youth about the importance of engaging in sustainable development. So we're still talking about awareness. I'm not moving past this in any way, but I've moved away from the activity, which is a campaign, to what this campaign is supposed to change, what is supposed to be the result, who is the target group, so I can see I'm focusing on youth. Or maybe if the desired result is to engage people, I can say increased opportunities for youth engagement. And here again, we learned a bit by talking to projects like yours. At the beginning, we used to say just increased engagement as an output. But then people flagged and said, Vola, that's a bit high as an output. The increased engagement is something that takes a little bit time, and it's not a guarantee. I can't promise that somebody will engage. What I can promise as a project is to give an increased opportunity for youth engagement. Like I will organize events, I will give them opportunities, maybe through some micro grants or something at the local level for them to engage. And then increased engagement can be my outcome if things go well. And if they keep doing what we have been supporting on their own, if they keep doing it after, then this is the outcome. But either way, I hope you see the slight change that makes this output a little bit more attractive and result oriented. So now we're moving to outcome level. So beyond what my project is able to deliver. At outcome level, sometimes we see awareness raised or strengthened capacities. And this is actually the case in your call for proposals. They have one of the objectives, one of the specific objectives in the call for proposals is to raise awareness. So of course, if this is part of your calls for proposals, you will have this in your log frame. And maybe this is something that we can work with the DEAR program in the future. But for now, let's follow the call for proposals. Let's have awareness raised as the outcome of your program. But I'm here to say what would be good practice for outcome formulation. So if the whole point of the project is to raise awareness, good practice would be to have this as the output, and the outcome should be about the application by our target population of whatever we have been trying to pitch. So if we've been telling people to turn off the water when they're washing their teeth, the outcome should be that they start turning off the tap while they're washing their teeth. So this is the approach. The outcome should focus on the change of behavior, on application, on what happens to these target groups after they have participated in our event. Have we influenced them at all? And I'm aware of the time, so I will hurry up a bit. So here we have
Milena,
monitoring tools. Yeah.
Can I just ask a question? Can you go back just, sorry to,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I
of
was
course.
just captured by the word increasingly applied by young people.
This is completely up to you. You can put it, you cannot put it. The idea is, my focus is on the word applied. But you could say that some people were already following these good practices even before your project started. Like, we're not working in a vacuum. So we want to see that they are increasingly applied. So whatever was the baseline, and we have to collect a baseline for this kind of outcome, we need to see what is the starting point. And then we want to see that there is an improvement, that there is an increased application of these good practices that we're also promoting among other donors and others who are working on this.
Can I just ask?
I think that's why the word. Yeah.
Okay. Can I just ask a question? It's really a question to Agatha. Am I right in understanding that the overall objectives and the specific objectives of each project are set and cannot be changed while that project is being implemented? Outputs can, overall objectives and specific objectives can't. Is that correct?
I mean, normally, yes, as they were selected in call for proposals. This being said, it's a question of formulation and slight, if it doesn't change the sort of the idea as such, you know, what the project delivers, I think there can be still some discussion, but it cannot be completely changed into something completely different.
No.
But
Okay.
if necessary, it can be reformed if it's really necessary.
Thank
we
you.
can see how to work on that. I think that's
Sure.
would be my take on that.
Thank you.
So this is what would be kind of a good practice formulation of outcome, but it is influenced also, of course, by the call for proposals and the need to assure consistency also among these different grants. So I wanted to talk about a little bit about monitoring tools that can be useful at outcome level, because we often struggle to monitor results at this level. At output level, we have a list of participants who came to our events. We can have some pre and post training tests. So this is a bit easier for projects and people have a bit more experience with it, I feel. At outcome level, if we focus on these behavior changes, the main tool seems to be a survey, which is costly but effective for communication of results. There are other ways that are less expensive to collect data at this level and that are more qualitative, because your projects are focusing on changes that take a little bit more time, and adopting some of these tools, maybe even across grants, maybe even across, you know, different generations of your projects, you could then follow the situation and see how it's evolving. So one of the ways is outcome mapping. And this means that you make a simple one-page template to collect stories of change. And that you train your staff who work on implementation, and maybe even some of your local partners and people you work with, to write up a short story of what has changed. What did this project contribute to in the given local community or school or whoever is your target group? And then that you follow, you collect these stories. And presumably you operate in the same communities over a certain period. And you track these stories over time and you see how they develop. So at first, maybe you're happy just that school principal has said that climate change measures are important. Maybe that's the beginning of your story. There is a declaration by an important official for you on the topic that you're working on. And then maybe over time, you track, how does this person behave? So is he changing how he's running the school? Are they starting to apply some recycling or reuse or other measures that would go in this direction of climate change. And if there are some success stories, you write down those as well. And so you follow basically through these stories, you record your successes that you have contributed to. These are not, again, we're not at output level. We're looking at changes at outcome level in behavior of our target group, in attitudes or different things. So that by the end of the project, you have a library of stories, and you can then do some analysis as a project for the final report. And you can see who have you influenced the most. Was it officials at local level? Was it officials at in civil society or in institutions, or maybe among the population of students that you have been particularly working on? So you can then do some analysis in the final report and see also how many stories seem to show a progression over time, you know? So you can say in these 5 communities where we have been working from the beginning, we have really observed the progression over time from just mere declarations to acts and initiatives at local level that we help to develop. In these other communities, we have experienced resistance, and we were not able to have the same level of effect. So it allows you in the final report, even without a survey, to have analysis of results and to show results in a slightly different way. And then another similar way is most significant change. So this is a qualitative assessment that you can undertake as often as you want, really as often as you have time and resources. Asking your partners, your beneficiaries, even your own staff, what would they consider to be the most significant change that the project contributed to? And it's an open-ended question. You don't give, it's not like a survey. You don't give them any answers. You just listen to what they see as the biggest change, and you might be surprised. And then you record these stories and you follow evolution over time. So this is a different way. So there's more on this on the Better Evaluation website. But I just wanted to mention this because people sometimes say, okay, but I don't have money to do a survey of the entire municipality. And it's not that we have to do this. It's just we need to think about, what do we have money for? What do we have staff for? What are the capacities of our staff? What kind of things is our project doing? And then to decide what kinds of monitoring systems you're going to have, and to develop some templates or to copy something from the online, and to put it into practice from the beginning of the project, because it's very difficult, especially for these qualitative things where you're maybe collecting stories or asking people about what they see is the biggest change. It's hard to do this at the end, it has to be done from the beginning. And then when your evaluation comes, you have a whole package of stories to give them that are organized, that are according to by a municipality or by topic or by something. And you have something to report other than we've trained people. Does anybody have experience with this? Are you maybe from past projects? Have you used this? Or how do you envision monitoring at outcome level for your projects? Or maybe this is a good question to discuss in our working groups. So at the impact level, just to finish these examples, is sometimes we see to support the implementation of the national strategy on combating climate change. This would be a frequent thing that we've seen often in reference to national strategies. And of course, we want to use indicators from national data at this level. We don't want to have to pay for huge data collections at impact level. But a more concrete impact statement might be to reduce CO2 emissions. Like, this is what we hope to contribute to in the long term with this project. And data is available. It's not expensive. And I don't have to read a 30-page strategy to understand what this project is meant to contribute to in the long term. Something concrete. And I'm not repeating things that I've already said below. So I'm not talking again about increasing awareness at impact level or strengthening capacities at impact level. I'm bringing it to the next level.